of you who don't know about CDHP, we are a 501c3 organization, and our ultimate goal, we're working towards building a digital library of materials focused on theatrical dance histories of Chicago, mostly based on original research, which consists of three main things. We conduct in-depth, on-camera oral history interviews with folks in the field. We digitize materials, footage, photos, programs, etc. And we do things like this. We host or participate in public events, sort of as a further extension of our research. And that's the part where we invite all of you to come along with us in that adventure. So that's what we're about today. We view this as a way to conduct our research on a larger collective scale. So, I look forward to learning right along with you from these amazing panelists. So I'm just going to quickly introduce them, and then by virtue of further introduction, we'll get into some questions and things like that. To my right, we have Bobbi Smith. Probably most of you are familiar with her from her class earlier today. Of course, she's the subject of the documentary that's screening. Is it immediately after this? Immediately after this. A long-term member of the Bocce Dance Company under the direction of Haggag. Now she's making her own work and teaching at various institutions, including Juilliard, which she also went to. Tina, I lost your card, but I'm going to do it from memory. So, Deana has degrees from Rutgers and the Maryland Institute of Art.
Yeah.
Okay. Formerly, she was the director of the Contemporary, a non-collecting nomadic art museum based in Baltimore. And for the last year, she's been the CEO of the United States Artists, based right here in Chicago.
That is literally more than my mom was.
So while I'm on a roll, Jen Freeman, aka Pochop, her book persona is Pochop, studied dance at Columbia College, performs all over town, and a regular GC's Trip Joint, recently had a residency at the Hall with their commission program. Have any gigs around town? All right. Cool. So this discussion is called Female Figures, Past and Present. So, we're going to be examining issues through that lens, but I recognize that's just, one aspect of anyone's identity. And certainly not, always the defining one. So my goal here is just to kind of approach this from a few different ways, get to know more about these women and the work that they do. I'm going to start by focusing on the past of the past and present, and I thought we could just kick it off with maybe each of you answering briefly. There's been a lot of sort of, I guess what I would call historical intervention of late, and sort of retroactive recognition of women and their contributions in various fields. And so I'm wondering if there's somebody, a woman who you admire or who inspires you, anyone, but I guess extra points if it's someone that perhaps we might not have already heard of, and you think we should.
I'm gonna say Audre Lorde. Yeah. I think she's probably known, but as of late, her work has been a huge driving force in what I'm creating, my perspective on art.
Is there a certain connection that you make from her work to how you create?
Absolutely. I think for me, my introduction into Audre Lorde was reading her poem, A Litany for Survival. And then from there, I started digging deeper into her essays in Sister Outsider. And I think her perspective of like really getting in touch with your erotic, which she kind of describes as a female plane that is essentially your gut. It is sexualized, but it's deeper than that. And especially coming from the land of burlesque, where I am playing a lot with the erotic, I would say she's been quite influential.
What about you, Deana?
So Kulthum is a Egyptian folk singer and performer who is incredibly, probably the most famous Arab or Middle Eastern performer of the 20th century, probably carrying us into the 21st, but isn't someone who has a lot of Western recognition, maybe only amongst folks who are actually studying music. But I've been really enamored with her lately as I'm trying to figure out how it is that someone can command so much respect in both a cultural arena, in a government arena, and in a civic space, in a part of the country that didn't necessarily always allow women to hold that kind of esteem. So I've been reading a lot more about her, and she's pretty phenomenal. I think other people should look into her too.
Connie Converse, singer, songwriter in the 70s who went missing. I recently found her and feel like I've been dancing for her longer than I've known about her.
Cool. Anything in particular that?
You know, kind of going along with all of the artists whose voices aren't heard, especially when they are alive.
Yeah. Okay. So I might exempt you from this question because I think it'll be answered in the screening in a minute. But I'm curious, what about? Of course, why not? What about your background, maybe your family or your education or your experiences, may have led you to doing what you do now, to a career in the arts or arts admin? Can you point to maybe one or two pivotal experiences?
I think my mom in general, like the way she raised me, I grew up in a very small town in Missouri, Christian, like extreme. But I think my mom in general, she raised me in a tight-knit church community. We edified and like uplifted each other in a positive, amazing way. But my mom, she doesn't consider herself an artist, but she definitely was. Like, she taught me how to sew. She makes like amazing, really intricate quilts. She can take this cup and like in 5 minutes she could turn it into like, I don't even know, something amazing. Like, and she's always been that way. And I think, that was like our point of connection growing up. Like, we always, every weekend, we would go to the thrift store, then we'd come back home, and like together we would transform that stuff into something else. And she was pretty active in like teaching me that I can create my own reality with $5 and my imagination. Yeah, so I would say my mom.
I have the exact opposite story, which I did it to piss my parents off. It was just the total opposite. So my parents are hardworking immigrants who, like all hardworking immigrants, I think, wanted their children to come to this country to become doctors, lawyers, or engineers, which all of my siblings became. And I went into the arts, and sometimes they think I'm an interior decorator and can't quite. We're getting very close. But I literally think I have like followed my career out of curatorial practice and more into the like artist advocacy realm. As literally, I can trace this to like, well, you've been trying to explain to your damn mom what you've done for like a decade, so now you just want to explain to everyone else in the country what it is that artists do with their time. No, but I think I did think I'd be a doctor, and I started school that way and did a couple of years in a pre-med program and was an EMT and was really active sort of in the arena of touching people's bodies, is how I want to put that. And I think it's because I cared a lot about others, and I thought that was the only way to do it. And I got a D in an art history class that I took because I thought it would be easy, and it was not. And I had to take it over, and I think the second time I was like thinking about it, it was like, oh, art is a way to care about others, or I think it was the way I was looking for that wasn't something for me that I found in the sciences. So that was my only kind of clumsy way of. Can you still answer this even though you're
Sure,
not?
yeah.
I just want to know.
I grew up in a mostly sports family in Ames, Iowa, baseball, and was, really driven, pushed to be in gymnastics, and, it would be the way for a college education, and had a huge love affair with dance because it allowed me to say something, and I had never felt that I could say something with my body instead of being just given a score. So that was a pivotal point. And I have a memory of my dad one rainy day, us my brother and I not being able to leave the house, and him coming back from work and saying, "What did you do today?" He said, "Oh, it was so boring, it was so boring." And he said, "Life's not boring, you are." That's like a baseball coach would. And I remember that being a strong moment to open up my eyes and
Speaking of voice, can any of you recall maybe a pivotal moment where you felt like you identified an aspect of your voice as an artist or arts professional? And how you recognize that and where that led, maybe? Want to come back to that one? Okay. Jen, a lot of your work directly addresses gender identity, and I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about what you're looking to communicate with regards to that, or what questions you want to raise.
Yeah. I think it does kind of go back to my mom. As a queer woman, coming out to my mom is very difficult. So a lot of my work stems from trying to have, in my mind, I'm having a conversation with her about, my identity, about other folks who might identify like this way, and also just trying to, in some way, show her the humanity, show her that I'm still that same person who likes to create stuff with $5, or I'm still in some ways I'm also harnessing back to gender, and as well as my church upbringing, trying to find holiness, spirituality, reverence in the female form, as well as present power. I think that especially in the arena of burlesque, it is rare to see a performer, particularly a Black woman on stage, who is making direct eye contact, who is chest open, who is bold, and who is also in some ways angry, and in a way that is I'm accepting of, and I'm taking agency of that anger outside of the stereotypical angry Black woman form. Did I answer that question?
Yeah, you answered the one before too, a little bit. But it does sound like it's a genuine way for you to channel what is that distinct voice.
Yeah. And I think through creating Pochop or Persona, it was a way. Yeah, it was a way for me to, outside of burlesque, Jen is typically quiet, introvert. I'm thinking of how can I make myself smaller in spaces, how can I not take up space? So for me to create this persona, I was trying to create the opposite of that. I was like, how can I be as open, as irreverent, as F you as possible? I'm trying to curb my cursing. It's hard. But that was very important for me, as well as creating a being that didn't need permission for anything. And whatever permission I did need, I allowed Pochop to grant it. Yeah.
Sometimes it's easier to access through a persona.
Absolutely. For me it is, yeah.
You said this phrase, taking up space. I'm curious from any of you, was there
ever a time where you felt like you weren't heard or weren't seen? That maybe led to, you feeling like you needed to take up space and be seen?
So I work in the nonprofit sector, and that just sounds like Wednesday for Sunday night email. I mean, it's just hilarious. So I think, right? Do we all agree that that just sounds like a lot of the time of life? Yeah. So, yeah, all the time. I think it has been way more productive for me in my day-to-day to worry less about how much I'm being heard and making sure I am hearing everyone in the room. So I think I'm trying to just also check my ass on when I do that, right? And like making sure that some of the folks I work with or the artists I'm with, that like we curb it too. And it's helped me, I think, navigate the world a little bit easier and be less frustrated by it kind of all the time. Yeah. What about you? I bet you've seen some stuff.
I feel that, as a dancer, we're constantly asked to be seen and put on display in that way. And so I think there becomes a gap between what you feel, how you feel you are seen, and how you want to be seen. So, did that come out right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think less about being seen and more about being understood.
And do you have any particular modes or ways that you can go about having agency and being understood?
Working on it.
Yeah.
So I think it's an endless process and work to make that gap of what I think I'm doing and what I am doing less and closer together.
Yeah. I'm curious. I want to ask a question about, I guess it's about opportunity, and two things I'm thinking of. First of all, correct me if I'm wrong, but it occurred to me, like one thing I know about you, it seemed like from what I read, your job directing the contemporary, not that you didn't put the work into it, but it kind of came your way without you seeking it.
Mm-hmm.
Which struck me as pretty different from you, Bobbi, making the decision to leave a job you had for 10 years and try something new. That sounded more like an opportunity you created for yourself. Can you talk about those or others, either an opportunity that came your way and how you decided that, yeah, this is a good and genuine fit for me and I'm going to pursue it, or kind of the opposite of that, I really want to do this, I'm going to make my own way. Does that make sense?
Sure, I'll go. I think, dancing in Macheva for 10 years, or in anything that you're doing in life, 'cause for a while you're always waiting for that moment or that aha moment of when something's going to feel right to jump off the edge or take a chance. And I had been waiting for that aha moment. And one day I realized that doesn't exist. And in a huge relief, not in a way of feeling a burden about it. It's like, oh, that's like some abstract idea we have, or I have. And once I realized that, it just became clear, oh, that's what I'm scared to do, I must do it.
Here's a great movie.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So the contemporary was not a job that I applied for. It sort of fell into my lap. But I think, let me rephrase this. There's been a couple of people who have been incredibly amazing to me throughout my life and my career who are more or less like mentors. And every single thing that has happened to me is a direct result of one of those 5 people being like, go here and do that. And I think that I am actually a little risk averse professionally. So I feel tremendous comfort when somebody I respect who knows me well thinks something will work out. And I'm actually trying to get out of that mode of operating a little bit right now. So I think to maybe answer your question, it was a network thing. It was just the people who made me have helped me make myself kind of throughout my life. And that's how those things fell into my lap a little bit. And I've never had an aha moment ever in my life. I am also still waiting for it. Maybe it's so I just feel like I'm kind of at the whim of other people. The other people are my aha moment, maybe. They're just like, you've done this for too long, you should really try something else. And I'm like, okay. Yeah.
Have you ever had an aha moment, Jen?
No.
feel like you
I
are.
think the only aha moment I've had was like, I can say no to things.
That's
Yeah.
oh, that's serious.
Yeah, like I don't, especially because I'm not. As a burlesque performer, I'm my own agent. Like I don't have anyone booking me or anything like that. It's me. So like, for a while when I first started, I was just saying yes to everything. I was like yes and, and then there's this certain point where you start showing up to things and you're like, I don't need to be here. I can't. And then it's just like you start getting those bookings and you're like, I know what this is gonna be. I can't. I can say no, and I'm not gonna miss out on any opportunity. Like there will be something else that will come, that will be that will like fill me, that will fill my artistic needs and like make me feel good afterwards too. Yeah.
Anybody afraid to say no? I mean, yeah.
Feels good.
Yeah. Learn from you.
Yeah, say no.
Or were you ever?
Of course,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, especially when I first started saying no, I was like, this is it for you, girl. You're over. You're never gonna get, these opportunities aren't gonna come again. And then, I found once I started saying no, more like the spaces that I wanted to be in, the work that I wanted to create, the people I wanted to work with, like all of that stuff came like tenfold almost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What do you think keeps you from saying no?
I mean, I think it comes from being a dancer, not knowing if it will come again. And knowing that my life, I take that back, I'm gonna dance until I die. But just wanting to do as much as I can, as long as I can do it. So.
You mentioned mentors, and we talked about, someone, historical figure who inspires you, but we didn't talk about mentors. Besides Deana, have you two had a mentorship in your life?
No, I'm looking for. That's funny. I feel like for the last 3 years I've been saying, and actively looking, which I feel like a mentor isn't something you find them. They find you. It's like yeah. But I would love a mentor. God can't.
Is there a mentor in the house? What about, talk about that relationship a little bit and what you learned and what maybe is there a lesson or two that if you are or should you be in a position to mentor someone else, you would definitely pass along?
Yeah. I mean, I think some of the folks, I think the thing I've learned from all of my mentors consistently is that like being good at something or smart at something is not enough. And I think a lot of them have helped me be like a better person, like an actively better person in the world, which kind of skewed my view of what I thought they'd be doing. So like, I remember being, like 22 and having someone I respect deeply be like, have you written a thank you card? Like ever in your life to anyone who's ever looked at you or helped you or been a part of your project? And it's like, no, I've never written anybody a thank you card. Or do you name the people that help make this work possible? Do you give opportunities to others? How are you dismantling hierarchy in your work? Like just all the stuff that made me a better person. And I think made me a much more grateful person. So I think, I don't know, it's just a correlation I've noticed that most of them kind of thought I was smart and ambitious, but more or less a punk and had a lot to learn about people. And that's helped me tremendously, I think. Yeah. And also, like, they've helped me understand things like investments and how the nonprofit sector works and like actual, like, the meat of the job. I think I had a lot of questions, and it was nice to have a space where people were just willing to hear those questions and then answer them. Which, I don't know, I didn't really learn that in college. Like, nobody taught me how to be an arts administrator at school, you know? I learned a lot of other great things at school, but not the like ABCs of my job. And I think you figure it out on the job, but it's helpful to have a guide. Just like, I think I'm having an emotional breakdown on this panel right now around all of my mentors, because I'm like, oh my God, really, like, people will listen to you. And I think maybe to go back to this point about what do I do when I don't feel like I'm being heard, like a part of me wonders, like, how much am I listening to somebody else? And I think that goes back to not being able to say no, right? So like this idea that I think right now I'm at a place where I feel so grateful for the folks that have helped and then want to pass this forward somehow. And I'm in a place where I don't know how to do all of that and then self-preserve. So learn, give back, and then have time for yourself. And all of that together makes it hard, I think, to just get through like a 12-hour day every day sometimes. But it's all good because life is wonderful and things are awesome. Yeah. Your turn.
Very well said, I agree.
Right? It's hard.
Yeah.
Do you feel that as someone who runs an organization and does stuff? Like how to say no, where to look for help, how to give help, like the struggle of all three of those things?
Oh, totally, but luckily I'm in this seat today, so.
Nice try.
So close.
Yeah, but you know, there's a lot of that learning on the job too. I think, you know, no matter what you do, dance is such an intimate and personal, oral and corporeal tradition that it's hard to imagine. Did you have a mentor? Do you have a mentor?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
Talk about that a little. I think similar, just a lot of amazing women that support me and listen and help me be a better person outside of the studio and function better and cook better and love better. Yeah, and that feeds into my art. Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's really no secret that women are very much in leadership positions in the field of dance, and dance, you know, lives in the bodies and the hearts and the minds of, you know, lots of very formidable women. I guess I'm curious to know, is there something that the other sectors or the rest of the world could learn about dynamics and gender equity from the field of dance? Not that it's perfect, but
I need to come back to that.
I feel a little bit like an outsider to dance. So I'm not a dancer or an artist. I now run an arts funding organization and we fund in dance. And while I had gone to a lot of dance, this is maybe the first 18 months where I've had to really look at it, like as an infrastructure, as an industry. And I'd never done that before. And I actually think dance is doing some really remarkable things in the accessibility space. Like literally thinking about ability and bodies. And I feel like at all of these conferences, like when I'm at a literature conference, I'm always like, you should talk to the head of this dance thing who is doing this amazing thing. Or I was at an architecture convening and I was like, you need to talk to this coalition of dancers who have done this thing. Because I feel like there's, as maybe, and I don't know if it's always been this way because I'm not as familiar with necessarily all of the histories of the dance sector, but it just feels like an arena that's really considering people's bodies. And I think that's something tons of other sectors have a long way to go to catch up in. But I don't know if is that new? Is that, or has that always kind of been?
I think it's just been growing, yeah.
So this is something that's been more articulated in dance as of late. Yeah. Like I haven't been to a single dance conference where we're not thinking about ability the entire time. Or it hasn't come up as workshops, lectures, considerations. And I haven't seen this in pretty much any other discipline I've gone to. So I think there's a lot there.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Okay. Why do you think that it's important? I'm going to try to come at it from another way. Why is it important to you that women make dances or occupy positions in leadership?
There has to be a reason you started making dances.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's important that, I really feel like it's important for everybody to make dances. And just as many women and men, and it's just as important. Everyone has to be represented. Every body has to be represented and has the same force and power and heart, and all their voices need to be heard. So that's why women should also create, and that's why it should also be heard. I mean, through dance, I feel like something that reminded me is, I feel like a lot of times we're talking about, or at least in Gaga in my practice that I teach, it's like how there are more similarities than differences, and kind of amplifying that and celebrating that. A lot of times we're made to try to figure out all the ways we're different, and there are many more things that are similar.
I just think the world's really messed up, and not enough people have been empowered or have had leadership. So clearly it's not working. So the more bodies in leadership, maybe we can actually untangle some of this, because I, for one, am just not satisfied with where things are. And most of the leadership has looked the same for my entire lifetime. So I think it's time to see a little bit of difference in that space in all arenas.
And are there specific ways in which you're going about helping to create that space for change? Any of you
I know I go about creating that in the way I teach, in the way that I meet people, and trying to empower people inside of their own bodies, and to allow their edges to go further than they think they reach. And that's where I like to meet people, is in the studio and in the work and in the physicality, because I do think that those things ripple into amazing faraway places, even if we can't really put a word on it. Giving people permission to feel effort and pleasure at the same time in their bodies, and letting pleasure become something that's not sexual or sexualized, I think can create really strong and powerful engines. Is that connected?
Yeah, of course. I have a couple more questions, but consider yourselves for more, and after that, questions from you all for a few minutes. I'm curious, the documentary Bobbi Jean has been out for a year now. And I know you've been kind of participating in some Q&As after screenings and such. Have there been comments or questions related to gender identity and any conversations that come up post-screening around female figure?
Yes, and also maybe some questions that don't come up, which sometimes speak louder than the ones that are said.
What are those?
I mean, sometimes you'll see in the documentary.
Okay, I guess this is a spoiler.
No, it's fine. A lot of my work, I'm performing nude, and I work a lot with pleasure, and a lot of times you can feel it's the elephant in the room, and it makes people kind of move away, and kind of that goes back to the not being understood part, and that's usually the elephant in the room.
Okay.
I don't know what to say more about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I guess none of us really operate within this realm, but it's, you know, part of the dance too, especially now within the ballet world. A lot of attention has been being called to the discrepancy between male and female choreographers and the opportunities that are there, and recognition and exposure. And I'm curious, I guess, first of all, if you have any comments directly about that, you know, things that maybe we can do within the realms where we work, but what, you know, I don't know what my question is around this exactly. Where can those opportunities be made, I suppose? Or what can ballet companies and organizations maybe take from contemporary dance? I think, you know, things are done a little differently.
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is to maybe think about creating work and even looking at older work that is outside of gender. I mean, for me, and I see this even in like the burlesque community too, but it's highly gendered. Like when even like burlesque, for instance, if you're a male, it's instantly you're considered a boylesque performer, which I think is like what. Why? Like why? And I guess I think the same thing like about ballet, like why instantly are males like the base? And you know what I mean? Like some of the most powerful work I've experienced is when gender is taken away and like I am seeing just like a human body. I'm not even thinking about, oh, look at that tough woman, or look at how strong she is, or any of those things. I'm not thinking about gender. I'm looking at the human form carving, like moving through space. So how can ballet do that? Maybe they need to bring some queer folks into the space. It's just not there. Yeah.
Questions from you all?
Here at Loyola, we have a number of young artists who are coming from a lot of different places, and they have different interests and different passions, but they all unite in dance. And if you, as your sort of accomplished self who you are now, could give advice to your younger self, that might provide insight for some of them about, you know, the process of what it takes, and I don't know, just any kind of like, what advice would you give to a younger self at this point in your career?
Figure out how you actually know how to hear criticism, like what you need to do to receive criticism. I actually think it's the smartest use of, I think it's why people should go to college, is just to be in an environment where you can learn how to accept dissent. And then also, if you're really lucky, hone your gut and know when you should listen to it and when you shouldn't. So I think that those two things are super important for young artists. And will save you a lot of time and agony if you can just like get into yourself in that space before you're out. Also write thank you cards. So. Gonna bring this back full circle.
Yeah.
Figure that out.
I think I would have loved to hear, or my advice, I think we're always waiting for that part or that role, or to work with that choreographer that's going to bring out that part of us, or I'm going to discover that magical thing that I didn't know was hidden. You know, I remember being a student being like, they're going to do that. This process, it's going to happen. I'm going to break open and, you know, something's going to come out of me. And I wish I would have heard that it doesn't exist. And only you can do that. Like that dream part, or that what you want to break out, like you can do that breaking, and only you can actually discover all of that, what's hidden in there. You don't have to wait for anyone to do it.
I would say spend time in the studio by yourself. And it's okay to not answer your email. Yes, it's okay. Let it sit there. Yeah. The emails used to stress me out. Like, out, tears, stressed out, shaking out. So like, you don't have to answer your email. Yeah, I think that's it. And of course, yeah, write your thank you cards.
Yeah.
Was there a time when you didn't or wouldn't spend time in the studio by yourself?
Yeah. I mean, it was a long process, but I used to like hate it. I mean, I don't know, I think it was because at the beginning, so I used to work with the director and we would create everything together. So she was always in the studio with me, always like a voice that would be like, that was great, or don't do that. Let's try this. So it didn't really allow me time to actually sit with my own voices and see what came up. So once I was by myself, the first thing that came up was like all the negative voices that, you know, we as artists tell ourselves. And I guess learning how to hear those things, but then push past them was like the greatest lesson I could have, you know, given myself. Yeah.
Other questions? Okay, yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
Okay, cool. So there's so many Sarahs in the
There's
room.
lots of Sarahs.
We're all around. I guess I'm interested in kind of spinning off of that, just this idea of like the inner monologue that I think a lot of us have. I'm a freelance artist myself, like yourself, Cutcher, and I feel very lonely a lot of the time, and I try and consistently make myself face my fears, but I feel really lonely and I feel unsupported a lot of the time. So I think it's just like, it's not even so much a question, I just think it's important, and I would love to hear more from each of you if you have experiences of just like kind of battling the inner monologue of like getting through every day as an artist. It's very hard. And so there's a lot of fear that happens externally, and then there's also like the inner anxieties that I think most of everybody suffers from in the world today. Like everyone's very anxious and scared for one reason or another. So I'm just curious about how you guys like tackle inner monologue, like your own narrative, how it's easy to get kind of wrapped up in something, and then how you kind of inspire yourself to face fear.
I write my inner monologue down. So now, first thing, especially in the studio, is when it comes out a ton for me. So I'll spend anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour just writing everything that I'm thinking down. And then I try to answer it out loud. I write it down, all the bullshit at the end, sorry. And then I'll answer it out loud to myself, you know, like, and it is kind of cheesy. Sometimes just like, you're okay, you're loved, you're not alone. Like, you know, it can be like a little hallmarky. But at the end of the day, it does help me. And then I think also, honestly, finding Audre Lorde's work like changed that sense of loneliness for me. Loneliness was like my best friend. I was quite familiar with loneliness, especially in the creation process. So like finding her work, for me reading it, I was like, she has felt exactly what I have felt. Like she has felt this too. So that kind of like, and then also I memorized a lot of her work. So when that loneliness is coming up for me, to the point where I'm like, it feels like I can't control it, I'll just like sit myself down and recite that over and over again. I mean, really that's a lot of my practice. It's like coddling myself in some way, especially that loneliness part, yeah. And then I guess I try to share with other people. Like if I'm feeling some sort of way after I get out of the studio, I'm like, ooh girl, I was there and it was bad. Or like, or even allowing myself, this was a big thing too, allowing myself to celebrate when I conquered something. Like, especially if I had a performance and I know I killed it, I would just be like, just like, you know what I mean? Just like by myself. And then also like, yeah, just being proud and telling other people, like calling my mom and like, Mom, I know you don't care, but I just killed this. Like, I killed it, Mama. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, that's helped me.
Yeah, I'm stuck.
Okay. I think things that help me conquer the insecurities and fears is usually the work. Usually when I'm starting to, when the voices are getting too loud, I get just back to work. And usually that drive takes over. And it becomes louder than any insecurity. It becomes, it's like, it goes past and it goes before any of those doubts. And trusting that. And usually I just know that if I get more back to work, it'll take care of it. And connecting to the pleasure in the movement. A lot of times, she doesn't know all these. And listening to this more. And not letting those thoughts block all of that. And with the loneliness, I think that, it's a funny thing with the creative process, because I think it's something that I know for myself I avoid, but I deeply crave it. And I also know that to start to really hear, it is lonely, and it's part of it maybe, and it's okay, and you'll get past it, and then you'll go back into it, and you'll come out of it. And I think it can be part of the process, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. Maybe you can hear yourself better there. One.
Yeah, this may be a question, it's really for all of you, but I was interested, Deana, in your administrator role. You talked about self-preservation and how sometimes you can have these 12-hour days, and I imagine maybe you're surrounded by people all the time. What do you do to preserve yourself as well, just to maintain your ability to interface with so many people on a regular basis?
Yeah. Maybe this is the arena where I've learned to say no. I don't go to a lot. When I don't have to travel, I love being home. I have worked really, really hard to carve out time to be around friends and family who have nothing to do with the industry I work in. It's been super important for me. I struggle a little bit with feeling like I'm not supporting my community as much as I should by not going to every single opening, theater performance, dinner, gala, event, function, and about a year ago I was just like, fuck it, no, and I do it differently now. I see as much as I can, not during the most socializing moments of them, and if an artist has moved me, I make sure they know it. I make sure I send an email or a call or a text, or I find time in a different way. But I have a ton of big group social anxiety. The only place I actually, ironically, feel very comfortable in a large setting is on a stage. It's the only time I can do it. So it took me a long time to figure that out. And when I figured that out and I leaned into it, it made doing the work much, much easier. So yeah, I think I can't quite figure out today, like, living in the real world and living online kind of simultaneously. Like, how is it that we should all be supporting each other while we're still supporting ourselves? Like, I have not figured that out. And I haven't found a single person who has either. So it just feels like, back to your point about the anxiety of it all, I just think everything is so hyper visible now that maybe the thing about the loneliness perhaps that you're articulating is it's nice to be in your interior self, even if it's like deeply uncomfortable, But yeah, and one of the things for that, for example, is I realized I couldn't go to stuff if I didn't want to always be the person who represented my organization, that there had to be a lot of people representing our organization, right? And so one of the things I think as an administrator I struggle with the most, by far and large, is like a kind of director worship. A kind of like the president or the head of a thing is the only person that matters within it. So I think as leadership, it's like, how do you cultivate a team that we're all seen as part of this organism, so when they're out doing their thing and they're excited to see things, and maybe they don't suffer from the same social anxiety if people see them as affiliated with the organization. I'm not sure if I'm making sense at all, but there is something deeply frustrating about having to represent a thing all the time when you're also trying to protect yourself as a human and not just a thing. And I think in the arts it's really hard because I love our industry as they have brought me so much catharsis and love and spirituality and understanding, but also it's my job. And where do you go to when the thing you've chosen to spend your life doing is, where do you go to seek catharsis from the thing that gives you the most catharsis, almost, you know? So literally, like for me, this March, it's been like March Madness, like basketball has given me a tremendous amount of fucking spiritual healing. Because sometimes, and I think right now the world is so painful and so many artists are trying to find themselves within that, so overly experimenting art for me this year has been much harder almost than not, because it's constantly conjuring questions of race and equity and the world and politics and the president, the non-president, or whatever the fuck is going on, as opposed to just, there's no space almost to breathe in it. So I think that's a very long answer. We should talk later. Maybe we can do this thing for each other. Yeah, any advice? How do you self-preserve? I mean, you two are hyper exposed because you like literally perform. So do you go to a place, like do you still get to be your interior kind of introverted self, or do you feel like you have to, that you're losing that?
Yeah, it's hard because of the persona. So people expect, they see me perform, and so they expect that same thing
every single time
off stage. Yeah, and I'm like, oh, I can't be that.
Yeah.
You know, it's literally just while I'm on stage. Once I'm off stage, I'm like an introvert. It's hard for me to have a conversation. It's like, and also, it's just hard. You know what, I stay home, or I stay in the dressing room and I go. Like, if you see me perform, literally, you're gonna see me on stage, and then you'll see me like getting into a car going home. Like, I have a hard time socializing. I think I'm the same way as far as like large crowds, and like, I need to be on stage, or I don't know what I'm doing, like in a large crowd. Yeah, so I stay home. Just stay home.
That should be the lesson from this panel.
I'm really trying to figure it out.
I think what you said about the internet too, like online, yeah, that's another, I think that also plays into, yeah, the visibility. Again, people feeling like they know some piece of you, or they own some piece of you or something. So like, one thing I've noticed recently is like the touching, like after a show, somebody will like just touch me, and I guess because again, I'm like naked a lot of the time while I'm performing, so like, I don't know, the touching, it can be, I don't know, the internet and the touching is where I'm
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know, I feel like a dog a little bit. And it's not, it's one thing if like somebody is like genuinely trying to connect with you, they're looking you in your eye and it's like genuine, and it's another thing where, I mean, I am in no way a celebrity, but I think that people sometimes like engage with personas that way. Like they want to take a photo, they want to touch you, and then like they're done with you. You know what I mean? It's not like they're like actually saying something, they're like, or saying what they connected with me about. It's just like, chink, chink, gone, next person. And then it just feels like I feel empty. And it does play into the loneliness too, because that it's like you're not seeing me, and also I'm not seeing you. What are we saying?
That answered my question.
Yeah.
When have you not felt seen or heard?
Yeah.
I made people do back selfies with me.
Yeah. What's that?
I say, when they say, can I take a photo? I say, yeah, of our backs. And some people will walk away. But then we do the back selfie.
Oh my God!
And I said, remember we're smiling. It helps. Because then you feel like you're really with someone. So our backs are just as important as our fronts.
Oh my God, that's so genius.
How do you wait? Where are your arms at?
Yeah.
No, you have to get someone else.
Oh.
It's not a selfie
I guess
at
it's
all.
not a selfie.
Sorry.
Yeah, I forgot to say.
You've been kind of
Any others? Yeah.
I feel like sometimes with art we can get in our little like art bubble where it's us and our art friends and we all love art, and it gets hard to sometimes break that and reach out to like the general public and people who maybe don't engage with dance and art every day. So I was wondering if y'all could touch on ways to try and like reach that like crowd outside of like the wall of dance, and like ways that you try and like bring more people in.
I think that's, for me, it's been a lot easier to treat that as a one-on-one situation and not a group one, right? So, my family is not in the arts necessarily, and I have tried everything in my power to convince them otherwise, and it's a much better strategy if you break them apart, right? So they're not like a mass of 5 people I have to convince that they will like this thing. Instead, I can go, I know my brother really cares about the environment, and I know that there's a theater performance happening that I think he'll really like, and trying to convince him to just come to that one thing. So it's been easier for me to do it like hyper-personalize and individualize experiences with, I guess, the community I feel a part of that doesn't engage art every day, and then the community that engages art on the daily. And I think it's been easier to be like, the beautiful thing about the arts is you can talk about anything. Literally, we talk about all of it. It's why this profession is so beautiful, right? So I think there is something for everyone. I think you have to remind them that it's for them individually and personally, and not just this like, you're othered unless we want to bring you into this space. But I've only beta tested this on my brothers, so I'm not really that this strategy works otherwise. But so far, one day at a time. Anything?
No, I think the personal, inviting the person you check out at the grocery store, or making those small gestures can go a really long way.
Last one, I saw a hand. No? No?
I was just closing the window.
I just wanted to ask what you feel hopeful about in your practice or in the communities in which you're embedded in an art sense, but also where you think your work is having the most impact, and what you're hopeful about in that regard, I guess, for the future.
We're just up here looking for hope, I think.
Everybody's looking for it. Yeah. Damn.
I think we can revoke your moderator privileges if you have found hope.
I am just like, well, I'm hopeful in the sense that it seems like there are more people listening and taking more care to make sure that others are heard. That does seem to me to be a little bit more of a focused and motivated practice. Most definitely within dance, but I think beyond the art walls as well. And that gives me hope that people are listening.
when I first took my job, I was really nervous because it's national and they kind of briefed me that there'd be a ton of travel the first year. And I took this job literally the day that Trump was inaugurated. And it felt like a really strange time to then like take our little sideshow on the road. And I remember thinking like, how the hell am I going to take this team into suburban Ohio or eastern Kentucky or the border of the Mexico-Texas border? But I'll say that we've now been traveling really, really intensely for a year in one of these moments where people just want to talk to each other, I think a lot. And I have more hope in the American public than I think you'd ever glean from watching the news. And I think it really doesn't matter what side of the aisle people fall on, and I'm not trying to sound like an apologist, but I think that most people are just really, really fucking tired and want their kids to be better off than they are and want their bodies to not feel so sick. And they don't want to feel like they're working tooth and nail to get to spend very little time with the people that they care about. And I think all over the country, people know that our government is lying to them. They don't know how to fix that necessarily. But it has been really important for me to sit in some of those communities that I completely misjudged and to still feel safe and feel like we can disagree, but in the very least, we're all kind of fed up with it. So I think it's hopeful. It makes me really sad for our country. It makes me feel like it's harder to find a solution. But it wasn't as scary as I thought it would be. And I'm very grateful for that. So, a little bit. But way more drinking. Way more drinking than hope. But there's some, you know.
If not directly hope, can you maybe talk about something you're looking forward to or a goal that you have in mind for your own future, even as an artist? What's next for you?
I'm not an artist, I'm out.
Actually, it made me think of like where I see hope, and where I feel hope is when I dance with people, and I see it in their bodies. And even if I can see when people come into class and they feel down and hopeless, and I can see how much the joy in them, in their bodies, will then change their day. And I see it in all of our bodies. Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much. Don't forget.